The sea stretched endlessly, a glittering expanse of blue and silver, but the city of Tyre stood like a fortress rising from the waves, stubborn and defiant. Alexander of Macedon had marched across continents, fought countless battles, and toppled kings. He had defeated Darius at Issus, humbled the Persian Empire, and claimed victory after victory. Yet now, before him lay a challenge unlike any other. Tyre, an island city in the Mediterranean, rich, fortified, and seemingly impregnable. Its walls rose from the water itself, its towers proud, its people confident that the sea would protect them. Alexander had conquered armies. Now he would have to conquer water and stone, ingenuity against fortification, persistence against pride. He arrived with a fleet, though small compared to the city's resources, and a land army seasoned in victory. Tyre's citizens watched from their walls, mocking the invaders. "No one crosses our waters," they shouted. The city had survived Persian sieges, rebellions, and storms. What chance did a single Macedonian king have? Alexander understood the danger. This would not be a battle of horses or phalanxes. This would be a siege, a test of strategy, engineering, patience, and unrelenting will. And Alexander did not know failure. He did not know retreat. Every city that fell before him had been warned, and every city that resisted would face the consequences. Tyre would be no different. At first, Alexander attempted negotiation, sending envoys to ask for surrender, offering safe passage for citizens, promising mercy. The Tyrians refused. They would not yield. The city's wealth and pride were their shield. Alexander observed the defenses carefully. The main city sat on an island half a mile from the mainland, surrounded by walls rising higher than any siege tower he had seen. The waters around it were deep and filled with warships ready to repel attackers. A direct assault was impossible. Ordinary tactics would fail. Ordinary soldiers would drown, impaled on spears or felled by arrows before even touching the walls. Alexander paused, studying the waves, measuring distances, imagining possibilities. He did not have the option to wait indefinitely. His army could not stay in enemy territory forever. Supplies could run low, morale could falter, Persian forces could gather again. He needed innovation. He needed a plan that defied the ordinary rules of warfare. And he found it. He would build a causeway, a mole of earth and timber stretching from the mainland to the walls of Tyre. Soldiers labored day and night, dragging stones, timber, and earth into the water. They constructed floating platforms, reinforcing them with ships, creating a steady path toward the city. Tyrians mocked at first, launching fireships and missiles, attempting to destroy the causeway before it reached the walls. But Alexander's resolve was iron. Every attack was repelled, every obstacle overcome. He directed engineers, workers, and soldiers alike, coordinating assaults, protecting the workers, and continuously advancing. Slowly, the island drew closer. Slowly, the impossible became tangible. Archers rained arrows, catapults hurled massive stones, and boiling liquids were poured upon the advancing soldiers. Fireships were launched to set the causeway ablaze. Yet Alexander adapted, creating protective towers on the causeway, shields, and platforms for soldiers to continue their work even under fire. Every day the distance decreased, the walls loomed larger, the tension grew. The citizens of Tyre began to realize that this Macedonian king was not a man who could be deterred. His patience, intelligence, and persistence were as dangerous as any sword. Finally, after months of relentless work, the causeway reached the island walls. Alexander's army prepared siege towers, battering rams, and ladders. The assault began. Waves of Macedonian soldiers climbed the towers, shielded from arrows and stones, attacking the walls from every angle. The Tyrians fought valiantly, throwing everything they had at the invaders, yet the inevitability of Alexander's plan was apparent. For every soldier they cut down, more climbed behind him. The towers advanced, battering rams smashed gates, Ladders allowed troops to scale walls. The Macedonians were patient and disciplined, coordinating each strike with precision. They were not simply attacking, they were overwhelming, exhausting, and outlasting the defenders. Alexander himself led the charge, riding with his companions, appearing at key points where the fight was fiercest. His presence inspired soldiers, terrified defenders, and brought an unshakable morale to his men. The siege was long and brutal. Hunger, fear, and exhaustion weighed on both sides. Yet Alexander refused to relent. His vision was clear. The city must fall, not for plunder alone, but for the lesson it would send across the Mediterranean. No city could resist his will. Macedonian soldiers poured into the city, overwhelming the defenders in hand-to-hand combat. The streets of Tyre ran with the struggle of desperation and defeat. Alexander granted clemency to some, but many were captured or killed, a harsh reality of siege warfare in antiquity. Ships in the harbor were burned or seized, ensuring that Tyre would never again challenge him. Alexander had not only taken the city, he had demonstrated the power of patience, ingenuity, and relentless resolve. The conquest was complete. The Siege of Tyre became a legend in itself. It was not a battle of swords alone, but of minds, endurance, and creativity. Alexander had proved that even the most fortified positions could be overcome with intelligence and determination. The city's fall sent shockwaves across the Mediterranean. Every king, every city, and every army took note. Alexander was unstoppable. The Macedonian king had demonstrated that no obstacle, land or sea, walls or water, could deter his ambition. His conquest of Tyre was more than victory. It was a statement to the world that Alexander's path was one of inevitability. Tyre's wealth and ships strengthened Alexander's own resources, allowing him to continue his campaign with greater power. Cities that had once resisted now yielded, understanding that resistance was futile against a king who could turn seas into bridges and walls into stepping stones. Alexander's legend grew with each conquered city, each solved problem, each daring maneuver. Soldiers told stories of his courage, commanders recorded his strategies, and even historians centuries later would marvel at the siege's audacity. Tyre was more than a city taken. It was a lesson in leadership, strategy, and determination. It was proof that Alexander's genius was not limited to battlefield tactics, but extended to logistics, engineering, and psychological warfare. The Macedonian army, exhausted but victorious, moved on, their spirits elevated by the knowledge that nothing could stop their king. Alexander looked toward the horizon, toward Egypt, toward the Nile, and beyond, knowing that the world itself was within his grasp. Tyre had resisted, but Alexander had prevailed, and the history of the ancient world would never forget the siege, the king, or the lesson that determination can conquer even the unconquerable.